City! Welcome to Guster and Sean. Sorry, we're in the psych right now, so. Hello
Okay.
there, young
Hi.
lady. It's
Hey.
remarkable that we have the same last name and we got to meet on this.
That's crazy.
Oh my
That's
gosh. I think I saw you at a Coldplay concert, right?
yeah. That's the hookup spot these days.
So I hear we were in the discretionary section where they don't show the cameras.
Oh, right.
That
The side
rings a
piece.
bell.
The side piece section. Yeah.
Side piece section. That's what it was. Yeah, I prefer discretion section, but well, awesome.
Well, let's get started on this. So let's first do an introduction. Aaron, I'll let you do the introduction into us and then what 𝗀𝗵𝗁 is, and then I'll kind of step in as the agent side.
Okay, great. For those that don't know, my name is Aaron. This is my wonderful bride, Rachel, who I'm enamored with. She's brilliant, and I'm grateful to be part of her. She's also expecting our next spawn, another boy. Rachel has 4 boys, one of which is myself. So kudos to Rachel. 𝗀𝗵𝗁 is a vacation rental company that we own and manage here in Utah, primarily managing homes in Utah and Idaho, and then a few boutique hotel iterations, some less than others. But that's kind of what we've been doing. We started in a basement, just an Airbnb, and then from there kind of grew into nightly rental, vacation rental, and now we're kind of a fully integrated system where Rachel helps people from the investment side, and we find somebody, or we help them find the home, work through furnishing, rehab, and then we can manage it long-term from an asset management standpoint, as kind of the basics of our company.
Yep. So we are based in Utah. That's the market that I work with 𝗪𝗂𝗹𝗹. So I am the 𝗪𝗂𝗹 short-term rental agent in Utah. I live in northern Utah, but we also own and operate in southern and northern Utah. So yeah, that's what we do. And today we are going to talk about the challenges that come with short-term rental, and we have lots of them. So if you want the reality, we're here, but also in a lot of hope of how to handle these things and different things. So let's first start this off by, if you are here, go ahead and put in the comments of where you're tuning in from. I think the thing, we are in the Salt Lake market, but a lot of these challenges apply across the board, regardless of where you are. But to kick us off, Aaron, I'm going to ask you a question first. What excites you most about the Salt Lake City short-term rental market right now?
Yeah, I think right now we're in an appreciation area. And so like if you buy anything, it's just increasing in value by just owning it. That's a really cool thing, as well as I would say that Utah as a whole, there's a lot of growth that's occurring here, which partially leads into that appreciation, but also comes with a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of tech companies, northern Utah, that are investing here. We have an ownership group for a sports conglomerate that brought an NHL team here, and there's talk about other growth plans that they have, realizing that it's talk, but at the same rate, they brought a team here, so there's some action as associated part of it. And then also pretty heavily ski focused. The Olympics are coming, and so more development and or enhancement of our facilities will come. One thing I actually love about Salt Lake City, specific to the Olympics, because we get talk, there's a lot of people that talk about that and ask about it, is we're one of the few cities that still utilizes our complexes, whereas a lot of them, they build them and then they're not used anymore. The majority of our complexes are still in use. They're still doing things, which is rather unique. And that also leads into some of the investment strategy of if you buy places that are close to some of those amenities, there's training rentals, meaning at one time we had the Flying Kangaroos, which is Australians team, ski team. They rented one of our places for a season for training. So there's opportunities like that. But those are some of the things that I'm excited about. Looks like I'm getting dinged here. Excuse me.
Yeah, hang that up. Okay. All right. So I would agree with that. That's exciting. On my end, on the agent side of things right now, Salt Lake, and when I say Salt Lake, I mean Salt Lake, northern Utah surrounding areas. It's a buyer's market at the moment. homes are
Mm.
sitting on the market for a very long time, and concessions are always offered. Deals are always ready to be made. That started happening last year, and it was the first time as an agent that I had been a part of a buyer's market, whereas it's been, in my experience, a seller's market where you have to offer ridiculously over asking price. So this is the first time where there's actual negotiation room. So it's actually a really good time to buy.
Well, and I'll add on to that. I mean, for the sake of this, one thing that's also super advantageous about that is seller finance and or subject to becomes more of a reality. That's something that Rachel and I kind of have tag team. Rachel is specific to the agent side and facilitates a lot of that. Whereas on my side, I'm more investment or strategic financing focused. Creative finance is another term that's used. And some owners, like they're more willing because they obviously want to sell their home. They, at face value, people want to sell through traditional means because it means all the cash up front. However, people are open to it because they still want to sell, and sometimes they get a lot of those same benefits. And creative finance, you're able to build a deal that works for everybody. That's probably another thing that I like seeing. Yet again, you've got to do it right, make sure you have right contracts put in place. It's not like it's an easy thing to walk through, and so that's why sometimes it's important to work with someone who's done it, and or have some good attorneys, which we can facilitate in helping and or connect you with other people that do.
Right. Okay. Now, from your perspective, what makes Salt Lake City different from other short-term rental markets that you've worked in or studied?
Yeah. We also, I mean, specific to Salt Lake, I mean, as context, we manage a number of homes in southeastern Idaho, Island Park, which is the right outside of Yellowstone. And then we used to manage in other parts of Utah, Vernal, Utah, a little bit more remote. I think the thing that is nice about Salt Lake is very similar to many metropolitan areas, is there's lots of exit strategies, as well as there's also lots of rental strategies. So one area that we really like, it's called Sandy, Utah. It's about 20 minutes outside of downtown Salt Lake City. It's at the mouth of both Big and Cottonwood Canyons, which are both ski places, Snowbird, Solitude, Alta, Brighton, ski resorts that are here in the area. And the thing that we like about it is we can have several different rental strategies, meaning in season, ski season, we can do the short-term rental aspect, and then out of season, because it has some metropolitan aspects or suburbs, we can do midterm rental and or contract insurance claim placement. So those things are nice about the Salt Lake City areas, that there's several ways to rent it from a rental strategy, as well as sometimes you can plan your numbers and or cities change rules. And so exit strategy or shifting from short-term to midterm and or long-term is a little bit more viable, as opposed to putting all your investment into a very specific short-term rental, mouth of the canyon, all that thing, that if there's no snow, like last season in Park City, Vail obviously had some conflicts with their ski patrol, and bookings were down for everybody, and it was out of everybody's control from a rental standpoint. We couldn't do anything, so the season wasn't great because the mountain wasn't open because of things that were completely out of our control. So that's one thing specific on the metropolitan area that of Salt Lake City that I think is an advantageous thing. Downside too, though, is you have to know the regulations, and you've got to be able to dial in and make sure that you do them legally, because there are plenty of ways to get shut down and or get taken advantage of in some ways.
Right. Yep, I agree with that. I think it's interesting in differentiating the Utah market. So we're very fluent in the northern Utah market and the southern Utah market, and they're completely different. Northern Utah is ski heavy, southern is Red Rock National Parks. So yeah, you have to know the area. So I like those two because they offer completely different things. As an owner of short-term rentals, I like having the northern Utah properties that are heavy season in the winter and summer, and then the southern Utah properties that are heavy season spring and fall, and to have those get that cash flow coming in all year because I own in different spots is super helpful.
It's actually been a huge relief for us. We formerly were just northern Utah, meaning Salt Lake City area, expanded to southern Utah, and it's added an element of stability. Now, granted, for those that are tuning in, clearly you're like, well, I can't buy two assets. Subject to how much pricing that you have available or capital, there's actually a lot more opportunity to get reasonably priced things, and as well as I mean, here's an example. Last week I had somebody reach out to me. They have a 3-bedroom townhome-like place in a development that is in St. George. It's got a pool, it's got all those things, but their manager is only on Airbnb, which is just one of several booking channels. And they're saying, I'm struggling because we're not making the payments and I'm bleeding money. Well, a huge part of it is you need to work with a strategic partner who will promote it in more than just one place. And that's one element, how people get into it. There has been this big boom in St. George. And so there's a lot of this growth that happened, especially COVID and after. Now you just have to be a lot more strategic. There's still opportunity, and there's still new developments that are coming in that are so eager to sell that they'll give different concessions and things that way. However, with that being said, you need to have the right plan in place to multi-channel market as opposed to just one place.
Right. So this live is all about the challenges that we encounter. So I do have a list of questions. There's different topics that we can talk about, like regulation, competition, seasonality, different things like that. I also, if you're tuning in, please put in the comments challenges that you are worried about or have encountered, and then we can go from there as well. But to start off, let's talk about competition, Aaron. So Salt Lake City and Southern Utah, really everywhere, is somewhat crowded with short-term rental listings. So what is your take on how hosts can stand out in a competitive market in whichever market they're in?
Multi-channel marketing. I hammer and talk about it so much. It's not laughable, but like to me, in some ways, the concept of having your whole business depend on one booking channel doesn't feel like a real business, and it feels like a lazy way of approaching it. Now, I totally get it. There are some circumstances where it makes sense, but we have had a lot of success over the past year of pushing harder on other platforms as opposed to the most popular Airbnb. The other dynamic of it too is Airbnb continually gets more focused on guests and puts us at hosts under the, we get pushed aside because there's always 2 to 3 people to fill our spot of the next person that watched the next video who's going to throw a place up and then get shut down. Whereas Airbnb doesn't necessarily care about those people because there'll be another one to do it. Whereas there's other platforms. We recently got listed on 𝗪𝗵𝘁, and only 3% of all short-term rentals are listed on it for Utah. I mean, automatically, I am at the top 3% and competing with a group of people that are not listed in other places, and also who are not, they're not looking on Airbnb to book. So it's literally a whole new market. We found the same thing with Booking.com and 𝗪𝗶𝘃 over the past year. More heavily European focused. We've had more European guests that are coming from those booking platforms that I don't think would have booked on Airbnb. It's not that they would have chose that one because it's a better deal. It's just they're not on it. So you're hitting different markets.
Right. And I agree. So Airbnb, it still is one of our biggest traffic drivers. It is one of the main ones. But as a company, as we start to explore those other OTAs, it helps us to rely less on them. Especially since, they just changed the fee structure that's going to take place here in October, where it's now going to be a 15% for hosts. So just making sure you know these things. So it can be really intimidating to feel like if you own a short-term rental, you have to know all of the ins and outs. But we work with investors who really, they just want the tax benefit of a short-term rental. And so that's why they hand it to us. And it's our job to know all of those things. So if you own a short-term rental, don't feel like you have to now run your own business. You can also just work with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And adding on to that, Rachel, for some people tuning in, they probably are self-operators and that's how they want to do it, which is still appropriate. It's not that that's bad in any way. I think that more so is the age of throwing furniture in and just listing it on a platform or two are over, of finding profitability and success. Like whatever you do, it needs to be targeted. You need to have intent behind the actions that you're taking as it relates to marketing. Just like any business. If we have a coffee shop, if we're talking about coffee shops, we're going to put ad spend in the appropriate places that that it makes sense. So that's more so, if you could take anything from this, just be strategic and think, if I get kicked off, what are the downsides of, only depending on this one channel?
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan is talking about how every operator should be working to align with them, which is very true. With Marriott, they are more picky, and there are things that you have to do to your homes and listing to align with them as well. But we're testing it out. Hopefully it's worth it. We'll have data soon. Rommel, St. George seems like a market that's seen a huge price increase over recent years. Is there any surrounding submarkets you recommend that have a great entry price? Yes, there is. So I've actually had this conversation a few times. St. George it's the dense population city of southern Utah, so it's the one everyone flocks to first. However, there are so many resorts there that are short-term rental friendly resorts, and so you're literally competing with all 20 of your neighbors who have the exact same setup. So people just flock there. However, if you go on the outsides just a bit, I would recommend looking into Ivins, which is a golf hub. Really all of St. George's, but Ivins is a great spot. And the AirDNA score on Ivins is pretty high. I've looked at entry price there. It's decent. So I would look at Ivins. I would also look in surrounding areas that are more remote. So there is, we own in a little town called 𝗀𝗵𝗁, and it's to the east of Zion National Park. It's a tough market because it's remote, but it's also more unique in the stays that it offers. There's actually a listing for sale right now in Glendale, which is adorable. It's this tiny little town, but the home is perched up on a mountain, so there's views. It has a geodome, and there's 2 homes on the lot. So, and it's been performing as an STR. So that one's currently for sale. So I would look in those little surrounding areas that there's like Orderville, Glendale, 𝗀𝗵𝗁 on the east side of Zion that offer the views and the space that St. George is lacking in. So that's where I would look. We have managed homes in Hurricane, which is spelled hurricane, but it's pronounced hurricane. And most of what we've managed there is resort style, and they did not perform very well because it was resort style. So
I think another thing too to make mention, we absolutely love that the other side, and we've invested on the other side. Meaning, when I say the other side, 𝗀𝗵𝗁 basically is one corner of the state closer to Lake Powell, whereas St. George is the opposite side, more west. And there's huge opportunity in these more rural markets. However, the one piece that you do have to be very aware of is, okay, because it's rural, because there's less people, there's clearly a competitive edge. However, servicing, how can I service it? Who am I going to connect to? So your boots on the ground becomes the one vital piece that then breaks down the whole equation if you don't have it. And so if you're looking in those associated markets, there's definitely opportunity, but it's thinking, okay, great, this is an incredible, cute little place. However, who's going to do it? How can I find that person? And and this is something that I always recommend, is boots on the ground always wins, is something that I say, which is we at one point a couple of years ago, we were managing in a town called Vernal, which is another corner of our state. And I couldn't find a cleaner online. I would call all these things. So I literally walked hotels and gave my card to every cleaner. I walked the Lowe's aisle in the cleaning aisle. And when people were getting a lot of cleaning stuff, I was like, hey, that's a lot of cleaning stuff. And I found my best cleaner from the Lowe's aisle of the cleaning section. And so boots on the ground, beating the streets, connecting with people, that's often where we found most of our success. And that includes in the more, we also have a complex that we manage in Alaska. Same thing, we send a team member there. And by just being in front of people, you connect a lot more. And we found some really good talent that way by beating the streets from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm. One challenge to note with Southern Utah is it's a very specific niche of people as well that are going there. It's national parks. That's what it is down there. The closest airport to St. George is actually Las Vegas, which is like 2 hours away. And so Northern Utah is the market I prefer, simply because the airport is within an hour of like 10 different ski hills. and you get more international travel that way, but it's just a different niche of people. You've got the ski people, and then you've got the national parks people. So owning in both is actually kind of cool and helpful.
Yeah, I mean, Southern Utah really is more of a drivable market. I mean, people whom are visiting are driving there either from the north, because there's a lot of individuals from the north that are going down for their vacation, for a getaway, going to Lake Powell, going to some golf, going to an event. That happens a lot, and so that's one aspect, as well as Utah has 5 national parks. They call it the Big Five, and there are groups of people that they will rent a van or van life it, and the intent is to visit all Big Five. There's Bryce Canyon, Zion, Escalante, Capitol Reef, and what's the last one that I always forget?
I know that last one. I need a map.
And the other one that's really good, really famous, that we all know. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Well, and in conjunction, then technically over in Arizona, there's Monument Valley. I mean, so it's kind of a hub of that, and so that's an aspect of thinking it's a drivable market. People aren't flying in most of the time, and so that's another consideration to put into if you're considering investing in those areas.
Right. Okay. So to add on to Rommel, he's talking about the entry price, and so I wanted to go over to amenities, Aaron, that helps with the competition challenge. Do you think amenities or branding have a bigger impact on winning guests over? So that's the question. But I did want to bring this to the forefront, like savvy investors that typically invest with savvy agents, and in that world they build what's called super properties, and those are amazing. They perform, they do really well, they have the high-end amenities. But let's talk about the amenities at a lower entry price. If you don't have, $350,000 to drop into the amenities, is there still a way that you think having what amenities or branding can have a big impact on winning guests over? Does it have to be the giant super properties?
Yeah, I'll use what my grandpa was a very good businessman, and he always says a little paint goes a long ways. I know that I more so use that example of, often I think when we hear amenity or amenity spread, we think, well, I can't afford a hot tub, or I can't put a hot tub in there. And while that may be true, I think a lot of it also depends on, like, when I see people that have come to me and said, I'm really struggling on getting bookings, you have white walls with nice furniture in a resort like everybody else. Like your place is incredibly unique, like all the other properties. And so I'm a big believer of thinking, who is our guest avatar? Who are we trying to get here? And then catering the experience towards that. And if for example, we're trying to focus on remote work, a desk and monitors go so far and are a better amenity in some cases than a hot tub, because to that person who wants to work remote 8 hours of the day, a chair that they're comfortable in is going to be way more worth the hot tub with the incredible view for the reason why they're coming. So that's probably the biggest thing that I always think is such an easy opportunity, and it's really relatively affordable too, because we all think you need $300,000, but if you're buying a nice home and you can add one more bedroom or add another bed in a bedroom and then put up wallpaper that is a different color because it stands out, put up a neon sign, color matching, painting walls, desks.
That hero image. Go for that one hero image of something that'll draw the eye, and it can be as easy as a brightly painted wall or wallpaper. It could be. But as far as amenities that differentiate, I was taught by, when we went to short-term rental wealth con, there's a designer named Ashita who's amazing. They were talking about how they get the data for their amenities and what to add in their certain markets. So I wrote that down, and I have a trick, and it's a lot of using ChatGPT and reviews of the stays and finding out what amenities are actually going to work. So instead of like throwing in all of this, huge amenities everywhere, let's find the one or two that actually produces. In Utah, we know that one to be a hot tub. We know that hot tubs increase your booking 60% because we did like a 3 year case study on homes that we manage in the same area. One had a hot tub, one didn't, and compared the two. So we're able to say, yes, a hot tub will make a huge difference. It is the one amenity, if you're going to do anything, that you should have.
And
it makes no sense not to.
I mean, the other thing I want to add on to this, Rachel, is I think oftentimes, I mean, people get on these Facebook lives and like, put a hot tub in, and like, yeah, duh. But like, sometimes I get frustrated when I hear these things. I'm like, well, I don't have the money for a hot tub, dummy. And I think, okay, just reverse engineer it. Look at your competitors, go onto any booking site, and see what algorithmically they have not clicked. So one that's such an easy one that I think about a lot is babysitter. We don't offer babysitting services. That's not what we do. However, I have a contact of someone that does do it. And because I click that button on our listing, we are one more click algorithmically higher to achieving the actual guest that we want. And so that's one thing that I would think of is just go onto any booking platform that you already have the listing and just go down and say, well, I can't put a bowling alley in. I can't do that, but I can do this. So I'll click that, because one more click to the right guest, that's exactly what they want. We actually, probably our best performing property is our most average property. We've had it. It was our very first short-term rental. We started it as a room-by-room model, and it worked out terribly. We just thought, like, what is this home? What type of guests do we want? And Rachel said, I think we need to have this be family focused. So we've focused it on families. That's funny. And it has been consistent. We get good numbers in high season, average in low season, but it's consistent because it's average America, average home, affordable, and it has been running for 6-7 years for us.
And our average occupancy on that per year is like 90%. It's just targeting the avatar that we want. I mean, there's a trampoline, there's a yard, it's fenced, it's got a toy box and bunk beds, and like games, foosball, a candy machine, and it's a very average home.
And to Bonnie's point here, I mean, Bonnie brings up how much she recommends it. It's we actually we take the month of June every month and we travel somewhere with our family so that our boys can experience more of the world. Our very first time, we booked a place that on the listing it said workspace, and the workspace was the kitchen counter, and we hated it because we had to work on a kitchen counter with our beautiful, terrible kids next to us the whole time, and it was just not good. So like, that's the other aspect of like, think of who's going to book it and build the experience around them. And it's not always that sexy, shiny guest. There's great money in working on very specific things. There's a little town here, actually, it's called Eureka, Utah. It's a mining town. I have a friend that he built out this bank. He bought a bank, built it all out to be this incredible themed short-term rental, and ended up changing it to a room-by-room model and renting it to a mining company for 3 years at a great rate, because that was the guest avatar, even though he had this great experience in a bank and all those things. So yet again, it's just thinking like, who's going to stay here? What amenity do they want? And reverse engineering it.
Okay, awesome. For time-wise, we have about 15 minutes, so I'm going to skip along to the next topic of challenges that I feel like we have lots of experience in. We kind of touched on seasonality, which is having the different rental, what you were talking about, short-term, midterm, long-term. But let's talk regulations for just 5 minutes or so. Regulations can feel overwhelming. We have been deep in this. So what are the biggest hurdles that short-term rental owners here in Salt Lake area face with regulations?
I think part of it is just knowing what the rules are, and just trying to think, well, I don't want to do it. So like 10,000 feet and above, real quick for everybody, Utah just passed through House Bill 256. They passed a rule that changes the terminology in the code. Formerly, the not well language, which was after Representative Notwell, said that cities could not use listings as evidence against hosts. Now that has changed, and they can use the listing in conjunction with other complaints. A city here actually just yesterday posted, it's the city of Vineyard, and they posted and said, hey, we can now use listings to shut down your neighbors. To which I followed up on their same post and said, but doesn't it have to be in conjunction with other stuff and other complaints? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess it does, you're right. And so like cities, even cities, it blew my mind, it still does. Cities will say like, oh, we're trying to shut them down. However, the city is tailoring their approach because they want to shut them down, when in reality, the code reads something. And so yet again, it's coming down to the code, reading it and saying, okay, this is the space of which we can operate. And as long as you're following it, there are ways to mitigate and still follow it without truly defying or violating it. Even though cities may not want it, there's still ways to do it within the law as the law is written.
Yeah, so actually, one of these questions here is, have you seen any common mistakes new investors make when it comes to navigating regulations? The biggest common mistake I see is that they'll call the city and just go based on what the city says. And most of the time, the city has no idea. So instead of calling the city and asking them, like, read the code,
Well, and it's not, I mean, and amplifying it, Rachel, too. It's not even that the city doesn't know. I mean, you're calling someone who answers everybody's phone calls, and sometimes, like, they just may not like short-term rentals because they're irritated because somebody did a Facebook Live on a specific city, and now everybody's calling, and then they get all these calls, and that person will say, "No, we don't allow it." This actually happened a year ago with me. It said, "No, we don't allow short-term rentals," and I said, "Okay, can I see the code? What does the code say? Can you give me a direction?" She found it. The code says you can do short-term rentals to which they classify to be 15 days or more in their specifics. Or no, excuse me, it was 3 months or more. I'm sorry. So technically, you can do short-term rental, though underneath Utah law that is outlined as long-term, but you can host somebody for 3 months. And so that was what the owner's thing is, like, we're going to be gone for a couple months, but we want a short-term rental it. Well, technically, you can have someone there for 3 months, and that is considered short-term, though you called the city, and the city said you can't. Now, obviously, they didn't continue because it's not the most viable in that circumstance. But yet again, don't just take things at face value. Look at the code. The code outlines it, and then from there, you'll know. That's always my first question to people is, hey, I'm looking at this. Okay, legally, is there a route to do it? Because if not, you have to accept the risk of when you get shut down, not if. And that could be in a year, that could be in 10 years, but it will change, and you will have to mitigate it at some point.
Right. So my recommendation on regulations would be, instead of calling the city, look at their code and talk to operators who are currently operating in the area, because there's a lot of flow within these laws, especially in Utah right now, because they're changing. A lot of cities are becoming more open to allowing them and creating a permitting process that will allow them. So it's talking to the people who are in it and do it, rather than the city, because half the time the city doesn't even know.
We actually, I mean, it's funny you say that. We actually bought a property from someone in a remote market, seller finance, and we wanted to change some things on it according to the contract. And they said, oh, this is what the city requires for you to do that. And we have submitted all the documentation 3 years running. And we said, no, you don't. This is what it says. And they were like, oh, never mind, you're right. And we were able to mitigate it and do it because we just knew the law better, because we're the ones doing it from in the trenches. So I love that. I think the other thing is, you don't talk to people enough. And it's not that you have to use them. We're very law of abundance focused because we can't have all the houses and we're not the best fit for everybody. So just talking to people always. We also have a number of communities as well, Facebook communities that you can join to also build that, because we're community focused. It's just easier. All ships rise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's move on from the regulation topic. If anyone is actually interested in Utah and wants to know more about regulations, Aaron has worked with almost every city and is deep in it. So feel free to reach out to him at any point. Okay, so let's skip over to the seasonality challenges. How does seasonality affect short-term rental performance in Salt Lake City? Which I've kind of already touched on, but in Salt Lake, you've got your high times and your low times. Every market does. In Salt Lake, it's winter and summer are the higher times, and spring and fall, when ski season ends and then school starts, they are slower. So how do you navigate? What strategies would you suggest, Aaron, to navigate the low seasons?
Yeah, something that over the past 3 years strategic that we have done is we just shift between models faster, meaning out of ski season, we shift into midterm rental on some units because it's just a little bit more applicable. And really mid-season of the high season, we start putting out marketing material, listing in midterm rental places, putting contracts out. so that we can, when we roll over, when it's a lower season, we're still mitigating or we're still covering all of the costs or making some money subject to the home, because it's a slower season anyways, and oftentimes the owner, they just want to cover it because most of the money is made in the high season, traditionally ski season.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that's probably the thing that we have done that's differentiated us, is just switching in between those models. We
and
have
also
one property.
owning multiple homes in different seasonalities is very helpful as an investor to navigate your stress.
Yeah, overall portfolio. Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I mean, the challenge with short-term rental investing is there's a seasonality effect, and like you make most of your money in a season or two, but then the rest of the year it's dead. And so if you have in multiple markets, Island Park is a facilitator for us, Northern Utah, ski season focused, and then Southern Utah, more summer focused. The mitigation between that for our own portfolio and our clients has helped mitigate it so we can keep staff on all year long, as opposed to a seasonality approach of employment for our management, for that of our clients. And so that's a really good point, is the diversification in different markets also helps a lot of picking where those seasons are and then off picking in other markets so that you can mitigate the costs.
Right. And as an extreme example, our company manages a cabin resort in Alaska, in Kenai, Alaska. The only season that makes money there is the summer for fishing. Really, it's actually June, July. That's about it.
Sometimes August, subject to fish, but yeah.
Yeah. So our team works relentlessly on finding those longer term tenants for the winter, and they start posting listings for it in the summer, preparing for that. So just knowing your market and switching between the two strategies is what I would suggest. And then, Aaron, do you believe pricing adjustments or creative marketing make a bigger difference in off-season bookings?
Yeah, totally. I'm a big believer that marketing in the traditional sense of social media, to a degree, social media I think is a very challenge and everybody focuses it a lot, but you have to have really sexy properties for it to really drive revenue and be easy. If you have average properties, which are most investors, I mean, we have average places just because that's the homes that are available. Social media is a little bit more challenging. And so I think very traditional email campaigns, following up, contract focus of insurance claim, relationship building. So placement is easier. For our portfolio, about 20% of all of our bookings comes from direct booking, with most of that being extended stay focused, because we are built relationships for people to come to these homes for an extended period of time and work with developers in the area that say, put your crews here, put your families here, and as well as agents that need places until the home is finished. So I'm a big believer on it, but it is the aspect of knowing your property. And if you have an average home that is not necessarily the sexiest on social media, it's probably not going to perform. So don't invest a lot into the social media. Do it. I believe in it being consistent, but don't plan on it being a revenue driver versus email campaigns that, to agents that say, if you have a buyer, I got a place, or insurance claims. We're more metropolitan based in the north of Utah. And so that's a little bit more applicable. Whereas we have some that are very vacation focused, high energy, and social media drives a little bit more there, just because the property is sexier and more attuned to the awesomeness that social media presents. Though the reality is, you just got to get one guest in there.
Yeah. What would you say to the owner or investor of a short-term rental during those low seasons? What would you say to them about occupancy versus nightly rate? We tend to come across a lot of owners who focus mostly on the nightly rate, and they don't want to rent their property for less than a certain amount. What would you say to those owners?
I think probably the biggest thing that we talk a lot with our clients is lifestyle versus investment focused. If you're buying something as a lifestyle asset that you plan on using, and some of those decisions focus on that, versus an investment where you're going to say, at the end of the day, every decision I make is based on making more money. You need to quantify the associated decisions that you're making, because it makes it a lot easier and it takes the emotion out of it. That if you're not going below a threshold of an average daily rate because you feel that that's that way, then you need to then accept that you're not going to get the associated returns because you're limiting yourself to that. That's not to say drop it extensively, because clearly the lower you drop it, the lower caliber of guests. Yet again, I would think, how can we opportunistically look at this and say, okay, if I only want 5 bookings in the slow season, I want them to be awesome. So what are the best channels that I can list on to get the highest rate, which will then produce for that season? Or say, I'm going to take an occupancy approach, and if I get 75% of the calendar filled, then it's successful.
Yeah, I prefer that occupancy every time as an owner. Anyway, that's...
Looks like we have a question here from Bonnie as well.
Yeah.
Are there any changes or updates you make to your properties when you are switching between short-term and mid-term rental seasons? Totally. We have different listings for each. Sometimes both on Airbnb, for example, we have a mid-term rental listing and a short-term rental listing because you're targeting a different person, so your marketing should reflect that. Also, we list on different places as well. A lot of our success for finding mid-term rental bookings has come from Facebook Marketplace, and that's not necessarily ad spend, but rather being a real person and saying, I have this place and we need people to fill it, just like a private landlord, so to speak. That's been really successful for us. I think, yet again, think like a marketer, think like a guest avatar, like, okay, if I want someone to stay here for a long time, where are they going to look first? And what are they going to want to see? So if you're trying to switch from a short-term rental where it's a ski season to somebody who's working remote, think, the most important thing to them is remote working desk. So have your hero image be a picture of the desk, as an example. I'm not saying do that exactly, but think how they would, and just put yourselves in their shoes, and then think where they are going to look for it, and chase after that, and put listings or advertisements there.
If you can't tell, Aaron's a marketer, and I'm more logistics. So operationally, changes that we make to the property, no, not really. We will provide them with like toiletries enough for a week, but anything after that they have to provide on their own. But so in reality, all the changes that we would make are marketing listing wise rather than physically at the property. We have had people stay for a year though, where we would be like, okay, we can provide you one set of sheets or you can just bring your own.
And I was even going to add too, I mean, the other aspect of it too is when we list them in places and people reach out and say, hey, I noticed you don't have this. Would you be willing to get it? Like if we're going to get a booking for a year, like totally, I'll go get a desk. And the owner's always going to say, yeah, because really it's not, a $2,000 contract that you're talking about. If they're there for a year at a rate of $2,000, that is a $24,000 contract. So are you willing to spend $100 on a desk? Totally. That's actually another thing that probably a helpful tip is we even advertise that we will bring desks to the place if people ask them, just like cribs. People ask for pack and plays. We have a few desks at our warehouse that if people want it, we'll say, yeah, here, we'll bring them in. And we traditionally, it's not like we rent them out or anything. I think we probably could monetize on that. But really, at the end of the day, we're just trying to get bookings. And if we have to bring a desk in for somebody, let's do it.
I think the biggest thing operationally, yes, you accommodate to the guest, but operationally, I believe in Alaska, when we switch to that model, I believe that we don't provide the sheets there. I think Correct. That the tenant provides the sheets. And so that would be the biggest operational thing that you would decide on if you wanted to.
Security deposit as well, subject to the property, but
yeah, and then
really follow very traditional long-term rental practices because it's an iteration of that. That's a great point, though, Rachel.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, then let's see. I think we are going to wrap it up. We are at time, so if anyone has any last questions, go ahead and type those in. We'll wait for those if there are any, and if not, we'll just start this closing conversation. For someone considering their very first short-term rental in Salt Lake City, what's the #1 piece of advice that you would give them?
Work with somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because there are deals anywhere. Like if you hear through the grapevine or whatever, oh, that's a terrible market, it will never work. It can, if you find the right thing and work with someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Even the bigwigs, like I actually was driving around Park City with Bill Faith, who's like, yeah, I would never invest here. It doesn't work. And you know what? And the majority, he's right on that. But like, there are still deals to be had. And he goes, well, if you can find me this, this, and this, then I will. So like, if you are actually working with someone who knows what they're doing, then you can find something that will work. anywhere. And so that is the biggest piece of advice that I would give everybody in any.
And the other thing too that like we struggle with a lot is people are selling midterm or short-term rentals or they're trying to, but they just haven't built it out. They don't have the financials put in place. They send you 3 screenshots of 3 different things in the cleaner thing. When in reality, like if you're working with someone who knows what they're doing, they'll be able to compile that. Last week, somebody said, hey, this property grosses $6,500 or $3,600 as a short-term rental. And I said, send me your screenshots. I added them all up and the average is 2,600, not 3,600. So like the math doesn't math. And so thus it's not the right deal.
There are so many other agents that I've talked to in the state of Utah who, like, one lady was like, hey, this property should do great. And then she got all her information from ChatGPT. And I was just like, okay, no, there's very few people who know what they're doing in this niche. It's kind of like a medical specialty. You know, you've got your different types of doctors. It's the same with realtors and investors. You have your different types. So find the one who's done what you want to do.
And the other thing too that I want to add to that, that's not to like it sounds like that's a pitch for us to like come work with us. And clearly there's an aspect that that's true, but more so connect with people that are willing to help. Like we realize that we can't be the agent every time and we can't be the management company, and sometimes self-management's the best. But like we know what we're doing and we want to help people find success in the space and be responsible operators and responsible landlords so you don't screw it up for the rest of us, so to speak. So like just work with good people and get to the crux of it, and have appropriate expectations from the beginning and say, I already have an agent. Great, let me still be a tool. Let me be a community member that helps you. Work with those type of people as opposed to people that siphon it off. That's just, we're more law of abundance rather than law of scarcity. So yeah, that would be the biggest thing is people say Utah is terrible from an investment strategy. And compared to some other markets in short-term rental, yeah, there's some other ones that are crushing it right now. But if you want here, there's plenty of opportunity. It's just a matter of working with the right prospector to find the right nugget that's out there.
Right. And that is the same for every single market anywhere. So I think that'll wrap us up, Aaron, on this cool Facebook Live. So we are going to end it there. Thanks all for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can reach out. Aaron's email address is right there on the screen, and then which is our company address. And then mine, you can book a call with me. You can also at this link right here. So also you can reach us anytime at Rachel@𝗀𝗏𝗪𝗀.com or Aaron@𝗀𝗏𝗪𝗀.com. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks everybody. See you. Bye. Thank you for coming to the 2025